sauce is the key, we whipping it up. The sauce is the key, we cooking it up. The sauce is the key, we cooking it up. Hey, hey, hey.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of The Sauce. I'm your host, Derrick Mains, and this is your co-host, Andrew Kolikoff. And we got Jet in the background barking. Of course, you got to turn the camera on for the dog to start barking. Mine should start any second.
I'll bring him on in a bit. So, but
all right. Sounds good. Well, let's chat today, Andrew, about something I think that's near and dear to both of our hearts, which is this idea of what your superpower is as a leader. And I think I talk a lot about this with clients of making sure highest and best use of time is what you're focused on. I just mentioned this with my company, Podcastology, right? I have a producer, but my producer's gotten bogged down in the weeds with a lot of time stamping and a lot of shorts and those kind of things. So what did I do? Hired somebody else to do that kind of work and let him focus on the things that he's a specialist in. I'm really big on this. Anybody that knows me knows that I use dozens of other consultants, and it's just the way that I roll. I only want to do the things that make me the most money and make the biggest impact. So let's talk about the superpower.
So yes, I play this game with a lot of my clients, and I do a fair amount of coaching, and I tell them, what if your company was alive? It was a living, breathing being, and it could talk. And now I'm going to be your company. And I ask you this question of all the things that you do for me, daily, weekly, monthly. It's this one particular thing that you do for me that I get the most out of you. What is that? And you'd be shocked, Derrick, how many business owners actually have to think about that and don't know. So not only do you need to know, but when you know, that's not the hardest part. The hardest part, and we're going to talk about that today, is how do you actually do it? How do you go from being who you were in the business to get to be this person who is just doing your superpower, that one thing that the business gets the most out of you? And so many business owners really struggle, to figure out what that is. And then when they figure it out, how do I get there?
Yeah. And I think this is so hard. The earlier you are, the more impossible this is, right? And because when you first start out, you're doing everything, right? You're doing the books, you're doing all sorts of
which you
things.
Should be. I mean,
you don't have the cash
to invest in the business. You got to do those things.
But see, Andrew, this is why very successful entrepreneurs that went through successful exits tend to be more successful the next time. And that's because they have the cash to pay people to do the things that they shouldn't be doing. And this is something, years ago when I used to do coaching, and I don't do it anymore, but one of the first things I always did with CEOs was I said, let's make a not to-do list, right? You have your to-do list of things that you should be doing. Let's make the list of items that you absolutely under no circumstance can or should do. And let's leave that on your desk. Let's laminate it if we need to. Let's staple it on the wall. Let's paint it someplace. Let's get a tattoo on your arm, just so that you understand that the value of doing these things is not good for you. You go to a country club and look at how many people cut their own grass. Very, very few. Why? Because they understand the value of their time, and they understand how they have to outsource tasks like cutting their grass to somebody else, because that other person has the equipment, the expertise. They're going to charge way less than what your time is worth per hour. That even applies to leisure time, right? You have to value your leisure time in order to make sure that you are spending the right amount of time on your business and you're handing off the things to other people. But again, it's hard when you're early.
Yeah. And, I really think the value of this discussion for people who tune in will really be figure what that what that is. And I think you could figure that out on your own, everybody. You just, or ask people inside your company who you're working with, and you'll get feedback, right? Not everything has to come out of your own head. Get that feedback. But the second thing is, and this is something the truth is always in the details. How do you do it? If it's your first go around and you don't have the cash to hire consultants, Derrick, how do you suggest to your clients how they set up a plan to actually start
Yeah. So
learning how to delegate and affording that delegation.
Yeah, I think the biggest, and me, I'm all about tools, and the tool that I created many years ago for this is called the Clarities, and I realized that I heard leaders tell me all the time, I can't trust anybody else to do this, so I'm just going to do it myself, and that is usually a sign that you're just a bad communicator, right? It's not a sign that's
Or a
true. It's
control
just a sign.
freak.
Yeah, well, right. But I think the reason that people become control freaks is because they don't get what they expect from someone else. And the reality is, this, I say it every time I go out and give a talk, and I'm scheduled to do a whole bunch of talks here in the next month. And it's one of my first slides. Human beings, employees do not make mistakes. If a mistake has occurred, it's a result of a system or process you have implemented incorrectly. Why do I say that? Well, because if you had explained exactly what the outcome was, and what the deadline was, and when you expected to be updated on information, and you had a throat to choke, right? You didn't just tell 10 people to do it. I told one person, Andrew, I have to have this from you by Friday. Here's exactly what I want and what success is going to look like. I need it by 5 p.m. on Friday, and I would like an update every afternoon right after lunch on our progress. If I do that, guess what? I always get what I want. But most people don't know how to explain how to get what they want.
So
and because of that, they get trapped.
You said something, Clarities, which I'm very familiar with.
Yeah.
But you said something that I'm going to spell it out to our audience, maybe in a metaphor. What Derrick just did there was he gave, in one of the things that he communicated as leader to the person he was delegating to, was that I want, after lunch, an update every day. And here's why something like that's important. When a plane takes off from New York going to LA, and the computer, you set it in the computer, but there's still a pilot, right? When you're going to LA, that plane is constantly readjusting, constantly resetting its course because of environmental conditions, wind, things like that set it off course. You telling an employee once what you want, I mean, that can happen, but the odds of it happening exactly the way you want without constant course correction, it's not likely going to happen.
It's actually impossible. I do an exercise where we have these little tiny mini catapults, and I'll have executives. We'll put a bucket at the front of the room, and we'll ask them to pull back to build the catapult, pull back the catapult, and shoot these little balls into there. And then at times we'll give them a different size ball. Maybe the ball is heavier or lighter. We'll put a tennis ball in there, and they realize you have to make all these little adjustments in order to get that right. The reality is, if the conditions are perfect, right, you can pretty much get it into the bucket relatively consistently if you pull the right tension back and you have the right ball and the right angle and all of those kind of things. But if you move any of those things, even a slight amount, you get a wildly inaccurate result. If anybody's ever been to a shooting range or shot archery, right, a fraction of a centimeter on this end is missing the barn on the other end. So we have to constantly get back in there and readjust. And this is why I always say updating is the most important part of being clear with your communication, because those things are going to happen. I'm going to call the customer on your behalf, and I'm going to offer them a replacement. And they're going to say, no, I don't want a replacement. I want the item fixed. Well, okay, now I have to go back and I have to say, boss, actually, the customer doesn't want what we thought they wanted. They want this. How would you like me to proceed? And over time, you can build trust in that person, but not at first. They're never going to get it right if they aren't clear.
And here's why. It's because as you're going from New York to LA, there's decisions that you're going to need to make because of those change in conditions.
Yep.
Conditions are always changing every day. And those little decisions, even though you think they're going to make the same pathway of decisions you are based on the conditions, is slim to none. So even though they likely will make the same decision, you still have to let them know what those small decisions are in the journey. And the habit of creating that, that's when you start lengthening the leash.
Yes.
right?
Absolutely. You've got to, it's about building trust, right? And trust is a really core piece of any relationship. But going back to that, I tell CEOs this all the time, that to be unclear is to be unkind, right? If you are not clear about exactly what you want and exactly when you want it and the exact outcome and the timeline and all of these things, you are the asshole. It's just the way it is. You're the asshole. It's not
Okay.
their fault. I can't read minds.
So we discussed one way and how, and that's Clarides, right?
Yep.
Right. What does that stand for? Just so everybody knows.
So the 4Ds are, oh my, you're going to catch me. So it's delegate an accountable party, define the expected outcome, update regularly, and then set a deadline. So it has to be those fours. Man, I haven't called on that one in a couple of years. I haven't read my own books in a couple of years. But you've got to have all four of those things in order for you not to be the asshole.
So
if you have all four of those things, you'll get, the clarity. You can Google it. There's articles about it.
To delegate, it's right there.
Yeah.
It's right.
And I want to be clear, delegation is interesting because many CEOs will say these people are responsible. That does not work. There has to be one person that's accountable. And I love to use this term and some people get angry with it, but I have to have a throat to choke, right? I have to know who's accountable. If this thing goes sideways, who is it that is,
that's the whole responsibility versus accountability.
The buck stops here. Exactly. Yeah. Where does the buck stop?
Like who?
So there's
who
our first
ultimately
clarity.
Accountable. You have a whole bunch of people responsible for getting it done.
Sure.
But who is the person that's accountable? And by the way, that person that's accountable, that's the person you need to put most of your time into so that you can do those things we just said, those 4Ds, and then have them really replace that thing that you were doing so you can focus on the thing that you know you need to be focusing.
Exactly. There's a very short list for the most part that executives should be focusing their attention on. And they tend to get bogged down in all sorts of things that are, I wouldn't say they're irrelevant. They might be important or even they might be nice to do's, but they're not must to do's. And I think that's the key to successful executives. I talk about Elon Musk a lot. It's not that I'm a big fanboy, but to be CEO of 6 different companies simultaneously, I think 3 or 4 of them with over $1 billion valuation. Do you think he's a master delegator? I guarantee you he is. There's no way you could run that many companies, and deal with all of the things he has to deal with. Not just the innovation of the companies, but the board and the shareholders and the media. All of those things are really impactful and important. So you've got to be really, really clear. I think the other thing is you really have to understand the value of your time, and you have to be very. You have to protect that value. So if you think about what is the value you are to your business. If you're an innovator, let's just say that you're creating new products and service, the value to your business could be thousands of dollars an hour, tens of thousands of dollars an hour. So if you perform a task, if you're worth, let's just to make it easy, if you're worth $1,000 an hour and you perform a task that somebody else could do at $20 an hour, you have lost $980 of productivity, right? I mean, it's just math. You've given away $980 in productivity by you performing that task. This is why I think, Andrew, you're seeing the reemergence in the last 5 years or so in executive assistants. At Fat Scooters, I had an executive assistant. Why? There's no way I could do all of the tasks that I needed to do. So I needed to have an executive assistant. Usually once I hit a company that gets about $2 to $3 million in revenue, first investment I make is an executive assistant because they will keep you straight. They'll make sure you're there. You'll do all those kind of things. You got your Eisenhower. Is that your Eisenhower box there? Is that what you're doing?
Let me see if I can get this.
It's hard with that. You got your background blurred out. It's hard. But is that
Eisenhower? Graph. It's a graph from important to not important.
Yeah, Eisenhower box.
Urgent to not urgent. And I think if you look at things that way on that graph, you create the graph. Most people think everything's important, therefore it's urgent.
No.
But that's not really the case. You have to be able to discern as leader what is truly important time-wise now, urgent, versus it's important but not really urgent.
Urgent.
Right? So those are the ways in if you can like take everything that you're working on and put it on a graph like this and dot it, then you'll know how to prioritize things, right? And that was something that Stephen Covey told us in, the habits of
Seven
habits of
habits. Yeah.
highly effective people. I mean, it's right there. It's right there.
It really is very true. And I think it's a mistake that a lot of executives make where their schedule is so full, they have no capacity. And see, capacity, you don't want to fill your schedule completely full. You need to have time. I use a system I call the block, tackle, or handoff system, where I actually have blocks on my calendar each day, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon, that are 100% completely free time for me. Many times that gets filled up by urgent things that come up throughout the day. We have a problem, a client needs something, we have to hurry up and get it done. So I can schedule an emergency meeting any day this week if I need to, because I have the time blocked. If I don't use the time, then I use the time to write thought leadership pieces, to work on my own podcast projects, to do business development. But I have to have that time on my schedule, because if not,
hallelujah. And
you'll screw yourself.
To tell you, I figured that out a long time ago, but I didn't. It took me.
Me either.
It took me years to figure that out. And I will tell you, everyone, I block off my Mondays. Like literally, no appointment.
I block my Mondays and Fridays. Yeah, I try not to have any meetings on Mondays and Fridays.
I block most Fridays, but I definitely block all Mondays, and I block most Fridays. And do I have sometimes appointments on those days? I do.
Sure, of course.
Do I sometimes am doing something that I do, but I usually block it off for exactly what Derrick said. And that has made me, believe it or not, more efficient than you could possibly imagine. Because then if I've got really nothing urgent, I can work on things that I've been needing to work on for a long time.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, you ever heard the saying, eat the frog, Derrick?
Eat the frog. I don't think I know that one.
Yeah. So eat the frog for breakfast. So nobody really wants to eat a frog for breakfast.
Do it first. Yeah. Right.
What is the frog? The frog is that big, audacious task that you've put off because you either don't like it, it's uncomfortable, you're not good at it, it has to get done. And that you literally shut your phone off, don't look at your emails, anything. You work on that task. And if it has to be chunked out into 10 1-hour things, whatever they are, you do that first before you do anything. Because I will tell you, as a business owner for years, the worst feeling in the world is you've worked your fucking brains off that day, and then you reflect back on your day and you don't even know what you accomplished. You don't even know what you did. And that really is a shitty feeling. And I found that if you at least have one frog a day to eat, that you can just say, all right, the day was hairy, it was nuts,
but I got this done.
This one thing that I should have done, and I did it.
Yeah, right? That's great. Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. And I think that's why the to-do list, the not to-do list is really important. Being very careful with your time management. I don't take a lot of outside meetings anymore. And my strategy, Andrew, if I have somebody that reaches out to me and says, hey, I'd love to pick your brain, I say, great, buy a ticket to Secret Sauce and find me. I'm there. That's how you pick my brain, right? I don't do coffee meetings. You know this. I mean, I'm very weird about this. I did one a couple weeks ago for there's very strategic reasons I did that one. But I'm very big. If you need me, you're going to have to come find me at something that I'm at. Yeah, look. Or, if you're a client, that's different, right? If you're paying me for my time, I'm available to you. If you're not paying me for my time, you're going to have to figure out how to get through the loopholes to get on my schedule. Just is what it is.
Relies on schmucks like me that know everybody because I have coffees to help him. Like before this, it looks like he's going to get
found a couple different people, right? Yeah.
Directly or indirectly through me. Yeah. You know, his phone rang because I said, no, you need to talk to Derrick now.
Yeah.
Because now is the time.
And the funny thing is, I've known her for years and done business with her, but it just wasn't something that she was thinking about top of mind, right? So it's like,
I had coffee with her. I had coffee with her. And I was like, no, you need to talk to Derrick. She's like, right. I need to talk to him.
Yeah. Right. I mean, and Andrew doesn't make anything off this. It's wonderful. I get all the benefits from it.
Derrick theoretically could take me out to a nice dinner or something, like a steak dinner.
Theoretically, that could happen. Oh,
I
you
work
got
with
it, man.
food, Derrick.
Right. But this is a really important thing. You have to be very religious with your calendar. Listen, I used to do a lot of mentoring. I did a lot of work with ASU. I did a lot of work with universities and all sorts of things, donating and volunteering and being a venture mentor and being an entrepreneur in residence and doing all this stuff. And it got me where I'm at. Unfortunately, now I don't have that luxury of time to be able to give that time anymore. I gave it years ago. I prefer to give money. I mean, I even say this with my wife. She's like, we should volunteer for this charity. I'm like, just write them a check. Like, I can't go spend 4 hours on a Saturday morning cleaning up the park. I would rather give $500 to them to go clean up the park.
Thank God you do, because
yeah, right.
It really boils down to, do I give my
luxury.
time or do I give money? And I will tell the audience, Derrick is not wrong. He's right. As you evolve in your business, you have to evolve your habits and practices that meet that higher level that you're going. So, I mean, that's all he's speaking to. But if you don't have the time to give, you need to give, right? You need to give. And I would say you still always need to give some time, but just be careful with the time you give,
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think I see this happen where where people get so tied up in all of the time that they're giving that they're not spending the right amount of time on their business, right? And their business is losing money
in the business, but not on it.
Well, right. I mean, that time would have been better served you spending another hour writing an article or doing sales calls or whatever that is from your business development perspective, because that would have generated you the money that you need in order to, live the lifestyle that you want so that you have the time. I mean, you've got a choice every single day. It's time or money. I mean, you just have that choice. I'm just smart enough, and it took me 15 years to get to this. If I have a task that I need to do that's going to take me 3 or 4 hours research or something, I'm on Upwork within 5 minutes. And I'm hiring somebody for $60 to go do it for me.
So to round out our talk today, Derrick, and to personalize it more, what would you say your superpower is?
I think my superpower, and this is a great question, I think I'm a great communicator. I really do. I believe that I'm a good storyteller. I think that connects to the work that I like to do, which is I love to hear the stories from frontline people inside of organizations about the challenges with their operations. And then I love to take those stories and turn them into an action plan that brings change to organizations. So I'm a great communicator, but I use that communication in 2 different ways: podcasts, which I do plenty of, and working inside companies to take the message that the frontline employees are giving, the radio signal that they're putting out every day about the challenges they're having with their work, and then bringing that back up to the executive team, getting action to make change in those folks' world. And that change usually means you'll save a couple $1 million. So usually executives don't fight me on it because of the way that we present that information back, because we do talk about seconds. Cost of labor per second is one of the biggest calculations. If you don't know that as a business owner, you're in deep, deep trouble. I mean, you're going to be in deep trouble because your profitability sucks.
There's a lot to unpack in what you just said.
I know, but good communication, which means great storytelling up the chain of command to the executive team.
No, I get it. And I'm very similar. However, the difference for me, if you were to ask my superpowers, is, I have a saying, Derrick, that 90% of all leaders are actually not. They're just people in positions of authority. They don't really know.
Yeah.
They don't really know what leadership is. Leadership is a daily practice that takes years. If you think that you're a great leader and you're just getting started, you're fooling yourself, man. You're fooling.
You can be a great manager. See, managers and leaders are totally different things.
Totally different.
And leadership is not something that you read books about, because the problem is that in order to scale systems, you have to have a lot of managers to manage the system. Leadership is a totally different thing. completely and totally different.
And by the way,
and the
that's
skill
why-
set's very different.
And
Yeah.
that's why I'm a coach in that. It's not all that I do. I more get asked to do that than I put up a shingle and say, hey, I'm a coach. And it's because so much of leadership is in here, not just out here in things you can observe and fix. It comes from your personal story as a kid, the why you set the goals you set, why you're in your way with this and not in your way with that. And that deep level of introspection that is manifested in the things, in the way the company operates. If you're a chaotic person in general, your business is probably going to mirror who you are.
Of course, it's going to. There's no way around it.
And that's probably my superpower, is getting people to recognize and take responsibility and be accountable for who they are in their business, and getting them to be somebody that they can strive to be better in their business. So their business, now we can work on their business the way it should be worked on. And I don't think a lot of people look at it that way. So Derrick is definitely better at the details of that manifestation outside themselves, which is freaking critical. But the connection to their backstory and why all this shit bubbles up for them is not everybody's cup of tea, you know? And it's a necessary thing in the journey of leadership. Manager, like Derrick said, is different.
Yep.
So remember this, 90% of all leaders are actually not. They're just people in positions of authority. And I learned that the hard way, because most people try to build a business and they work 10,000 hours, and they've worked so hard just to get the chance to be in the spotlight. And my story was the exact opposite. I invented a product, and a year later, I was on the front page of USA Today, top story, top fold with a photograph. It was the day Sprint and Nextel merged, and I didn't have any of my shit together. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I didn't have an OEM manufacturer. I had nothing. It was just something that exploded. And I thought I was a great leader. And it wasn't till, my clients were owners of teams. Owners of teams are billionaires. Billionaires are different cats, man.
Oh, totally.
They started mentoring me. And that's when I realized I was all ego. I didn't know shit about shit, right? I didn't know nothing. And I had to reprogram. First, deprogram myself, then reprogram myself to be able to step into the business that I already owned. So
that's great.
We all have our own stories. So Derrick, another great topic.
It was great. I want to talk about kryptonite next week. I want to talk about what's your kryptonite, but I want to give one last example here as we wrap up. I want you to take a small piece of rope or cord or whatever it is, and lay it on a flat table. And then I would like you to push the back of that cord or rope and see what happens, right? It's going to go all over the place. But if you pull it, it just follows the line that you pull. And this is a great demonstration to show people the difference between management and leadership, right? Leadership is grabbing the head of that and pulling that thing along, and it will follow that path. Management a lot of times is pushing and then trying to keep that rope from not getting outside of those margins. They're very different things.
You have to quit and leave.
Both. Yeah, you have to have both. But leadership can go a lot farther. People will die for leaders. They won't die for managers. The reason that most people leave their job is bad management, right? They're not being led, they're being managed. There's a time for both, but 99% of what we're taught in being an executive or being a leader is really management. It's not leadership. So take that into heart. I hope you do. And next week, we'll talk about kryptonite. What is a kryptonite? I think I know what mine is. I probably know my kryptonite better than my superpower. I hope you all do too.
Until next time.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll chat with you soon.
The sauce is the key, we whipping it up. The sauce is the key, we cooking it up. The sauce is the key, we cooking it up.